Power. It's one of the most seductive forces in human history. It builds empires, shapes nations, and changes the course of history. But it also corrupts, destroys, and repeats the same mistakes over and over again. From ancient rulers to modern politicians, why do leaders, despite their intelligence, resources, and advisors, keep making the same catastrophic errors? And what does this mean for how we choose our leaders today? In this video, we'll explore the psychology of power, the patterns of failure, and how we can view political candidates through a more critical lens. Welcome to Impact Journal, where we draw parallels between current events and historical pasts. Power doesn't just change what people do, it changes who they are. Studies have shown that power can alter the brain, reducing empathy and increasing risk-taking behavior. A 2012 study published in Psychological Science found that people in positions of power are more likely to rely on stereotypes and less likely to consider the perspectives of others. This phenomenon is often referred to as the power paradox, the idea that the very traits that help people gain power are often the ones that lead to their downfall. Take Napoleon Bonaparte, for example. His ambition and strategic genius brought him to the height of power, but his overconfidence led him to invade Russia in 1812, a decision that ultimately destroyed his empire. As Lord Acton famously said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." But why does this happen? And how can we recognize these patterns in our own leaders? One of the key reasons leaders repeat mistakes is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. This psychological phenomenon occurs when people with low ability at a task overestimate their competence. In the context of leadership, this can lead to disastrous decisions, as leaders surrounded by yes-men and insulated from criticism become blind to their own limitations. Consider the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. President John F. Kennedy, despite his intelligence and charisma, approved a poorly planned operation to overthrow Fidel Castro. Why? Because his advisors, eager to please, failed to voice their concerns. As psychologist Irving Janis later explained, this was a classic case of groupthink, a phenomenon where the desire for harmony overrides rational decision-making. Another factor is the hubris syndrome, a term coined by British politician David Owen. This syndrome describes how power can inflate a leader's ego, leading to reckless behavior. Think of Richard Nixon and the Watergate scandal, or more recently, leaders who dismiss scientific advice during a pandemic. The pattern is clear: power distorts judgment, and the consequences can be catastrophic. History is filled with examples of leaders repeating the same mistakes. The Roman Empire, for instance, collapsed in part because its leaders became increasingly disconnected from the realities of their people. They prioritized personal glory over the needs of the empire, leading to economic decline, military overextension, and eventual collapse. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see similar patterns. The Vietnam War, for example, was driven by leaders who underestimated the complexity of the conflict and overestimated their ability to control it. As U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara later admitted, "We were wrong, terribly wrong." But why didn't they see it at the time? Because power blinds even the most intelligent leaders to their own fallibility. And it's not just about war. Economic crises, environmental disasters, and social upheavals often stem from leaders who prioritize short-term gains over long-term stability. The 2008 financial crisis, for instance, was fueled by leaders who ignored warning signs and prioritized profit over prudence. Power doesn't just corrupt leaders, it also shapes how we perceive them. Studies show that people are more likely to attribute success to a leader's abilities and failure to external factors. This is known as the fundamental attribution error, and it creates a dangerous feedback loop. Leaders who succeed are often given more power, while their failures are excused or ignored. This is why charismatic leaders can be so dangerous. They inspire loyalty and admiration, but they also exploit these emotions to consolidate power. Think of Adolf Hitler, whose charisma and propaganda machine convinced millions to follow him, even as he led Germany to ruin. As philosopher Hannah Arendt observed, "The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil." In today's world, this dynamic is amplified by social media and 24-hour news cycles. Leaders who are skilled at manipulating public perception can rise to power despite their flaws, while those who lack charisma, no matter how competent, are often overlooked. So, how can we break this cycle? How can we choose leaders who are less likely to repeat the mistakes of the past? The answer lies in shifting our focus from charisma to competence, from rhetoric to results. First, we need to demand transparency. Leaders should be held accountable for their decisions, not just their words. Second, we need to prioritize empathy and humility. Studies show that leaders who are humble and open to feedback are more effective in the long run. Finally, we need to look beyond the surface. A leader's past actions and decisions are a better predictor of their future behavior than their campaign promises. Take Nelson Mandela, for example. His ability to listen, learn, and adapt made him one of the most effective leaders of the 20th century. As he once said, "It is wise to persuade people to do things and make them think it was their own idea." This kind of leadership, rooted in empathy and collaboration, is what we should be looking for in our political candidates. The psychology of power is complex, but it's not inevitable. By understanding the patterns of failure and success, we can make better choices about who we trust to lead us. The future of our societies depends on it. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to change starts with you.